Hey, Breakdown family. So something major just happened in West Africa. And if you weren't paying close attention, you may have missed it. Colonel Assimi Goïta, Mali's interim leader who came to power through 2 military takeovers, has just been officially endorsed to remain president for the next 5 years. That's right. No election, no public vote, and no opposition on the ballot. Just a national dialogue organized by the ruling military government where most political parties didn't even show up, and a recommendation that Goita stay in charge until at least 2029. Now, for some observers, that raises alarms about democracy. But for others in Mali, it's a sign of stability and sovereignty in a country that's been through years of insecurity, protests, and political disappointment. So today on The Breakdown, we're unpacking how this all happened, what Goita's rule has looked like so far, and what this moment says about the state of democracy in Mali and in Africa more broadly. Because whether you see it as a power grab or a practical solution, this move reflects something deeper. A people wrestling with the question of what kind of leadership actually delivers. A country that's lost faith in a system altogether and is willing to trade democracy for something else. Now, before we get into it, I want to welcome all our new viewers, especially our new members. Thank you for being here. We're building something powerful together. And if you haven't joined yet, now's the time. Here at Pan-Genius TV, we're creating a global home for stories that are told with truth, intention, and power. And if that speaks to you, and I hope it does, hit subscribe, tap that bell, drop us super thanks, and consider joining our membership community where we go even deeper on the issues that we discuss here. All right, now let's break this all the way down.
Despite international condemnation, a show of support at the nation's Independence Square for Mali's military junta leader Assimi Goïta. They hold signs saying, "Down with France." Others wave Russian flags, hoping for Moscow's military support. And then there are widows of Malian soldiers killed on the front lines. For Jimeko Sagara, it seems like his country is engaged in an endless war as a result of a failed French military intervention.
France does not like Africa. Look at what is going on in the north. The war is not over, and it has been going on for years. Why?
Well, according to Goita, it's because of a lack of political will. He overthrew President Keïta in August and dismissed the president of transition and PM on Wednesday after detaining them for days. President Macron called this a coup within a coup. Goita's special advisor, Youssouf Coulibaly, explains that the PM and president were too slow to enact reforms and were insubordinate by removing members of the junta from the government. The threat of possible sanctions has angered the junta. Youssouf Coulibaly believes this will worsen the crisis.
Why should foreign countries interfere in our affairs? When there is a crisis, they should be helping us, not trying to tell us what to do.
The crowds are much smaller than back in August when President Ibrahim Boubacar Keïta was removed from office. Still, the military junta are riding on the support of a portion of the Malian population who believe that the military can do what politicians haven't managed to, which is bring an end to state-level corruption, bring back security, and rebuild trust between the Malian people and the state.
Confirmed as the new president of Mali by a constitutional court, Assimi Goïta says he is not here to stay and is promising free and fair election by February 2022. And so they chant his name. He appears to be the new strong man of Mali, at least for now.
So who is the man at the center of all of this? Colonel Assimi Goïta is not your typical president. He didn't campaign, he didn't debate, he didn't win a popular vote. He came to power the military way, by force. Goïta is a career soldier. He trained with elite forces in Mali and received military education from the US, France, and Germany. He was part of the country's special forces fighting jihadist insurgencies in central Mali. So he's no stranger to conflict. In August 2020, after months of protests over corruption, insecurity, and economic hardship, Goita led a military coup that ousted President Ibrahim Boubacar Keïta. The streets erupted in celebration. Many Malians saw it as a necessary reset. But less than a year later, in May 2021, Goita staged another coup, removing the transitional president he helped install and taking the top job for himself. He promised to hold elections the following year, but that hasn't happened. Since then, he's ruled Mali as interim president and has taken a number of bold, controversial, and strategic steps that have shaped how Mali is governed today. Let's look at some of those moves. 1, he's kicked out the French military. Goita's government ended Mali's long-standing military partnership with France, which had stationed troops in the country to fight extremist groups. Many Malians saw this as a symbolic reclaiming of sovereignty, especially after years of foreign military involvement that didn't stop the violence. To many in the West, this was reckless, but to many Malians, it was a moment of pride. 2, he returned to Russia. Goita replaced France with Russian support, inviting in Wagner mercenaries and strengthening ties with Moscow. Critics say this is dangerous. Supporters say it's practical. Russia doesn't moralize. It delivers. 3, he joined forces with other military rulers. Together with Burkina Faso's Ibrahim Traoré and Niger's Abdurrahmane Tiani, Goita helped form the Alliance of Sahel States, a breakaway bloc that's rejecting Western influence and challenging ECOWAS. This isn't just about defense. It's about building a new order, military-led, anti-imperial, and unapologetically sovereign. He's rewriting the rules. Mali adopted a new constitution in 2023 that expanded presidential powers, removed certain parliamentary constraints, and officially defined the country as a secular republic, a significant and controversial move in a deeply religious society. All of this paints a clear picture. Goita doesn't just want to rule, he wants to reshape Mali's future. Whether that's visionary or dangerous depends on who you ask. But one thing's for sure, he's not going anywhere, at least for the next 5 years. Now let's talk about how he just secured another 5 years in office without a vote. Earlier this month, Mali's government hosted a national dialogue. Now on the surface, it was meant to be a consultation about the country's future. Over 400 delegates gathered, traditional chiefs, civil society leaders, and military-aligned representatives. But here's the issue. Most of the country's political parties boycotted the entire process. They said it wasn't inclusive, wasn't transparent, and wasn't constitutional. And when the dialogue wrapped up, here's what it recommended. Goita should remain president for up to 5 more years. All political parties should be dissolved. A new constitution should be drafted under military supervision. Now, whether you see this as a necessary stabilization move or a slow erosion of democracy, what's clear is that the decision was made without a popular vote and without opposition participation. But here's what makes it even more interesting, right? There was no mass protest, no national outrage, no burning of ties in the streets. Why, you may ask? Why aren't Malians upset, taken to the streets? Why isn't there public outrage over a military leader extending his own power without an election? And to answer that, we need to look at Mali's painful political history, because what's happening now is less about Goita's strength and more about just how badly previous governments failed and what democracy failed to do. Let's rewind. Let's go back to the early 1990s. Mali was seen as a shining example of democratic transition in Africa. In 1991, a grassroots revolution toppled the military regime of Moussa Traoré, who had ruled with an iron fist for 23 years. What followed was hopeful. A national conference, a new constitution, free and fair elections in 1992, and the peaceful rise of President Alpha Umar Konare, a civilian intellectual and Pan-Africanist. The West, they applauded. The IMF and World Bank sent loans. International observers called Mali a model democracy. But here's what the world didn't see, or rather chose to ignore. That democracy was built on sand. Yes, Mali had multi-party elections. Yes, it had press freedom. But beneath the surface, the government was underfunded, the judiciary was weak, and the military, ironically, was neglected and demoralized. Meanwhile, political elites began to loot the system from the inside. Public services crumbled. Education was underfunded. Youth unemployment skyrocketed. And in rural areas where the majority of Malians live, government presence was minimal or even non-existent. By the 2000s, jihadist groups began gaining ground in the north, exploiting poverty, ethnic tensions, and a total absence of state power. And when these groups started launching full-blown insurgencies, the democratic government couldn't protect its people. In 2012, everything exploded. A coup toppled the government after the army accused the president of failing to stop a separatist rebellion and rising jihadist violence in the north. It was a warning sign. Democracy wasn't delivering stability. The country returned to civilian rule. And in 2013, Ibrahim Boubacar Keïta, better known as IBK, was elected president with massive public support. He was re-elected again in 2018. But during his time in office, billions in foreign aid disappeared with no visible impact. The military was under-equipped, while jihadists expanded their territory. The political elite enriched themselves while the people just got poorer. By 2020, Malians had just had enough. Mass protests swept the country. The slogan was clear: IBK must go. And then came Assimi Goïta's coup. For many people, it wasn't the end of democracy. It was a relief. Because after decades of broken promises, stolen funds, rigged elections, and a war the state seemed to be losing, people weren't looking for speeches anymore. They were looking for someone who could restore order, reclaim sovereignty, and just get things done. And when democracy keeps failing to deliver dignity, peace, or even basic services, people stop defending it. So no, Malians aren't protesting Goita's 5-year extension because in their eyes, the ballot box didn't protect them anyway. And the politicians they elected didn't serve them. That's the real tragedy here. This isn't a coup. It's the collapse of trust in the entire idea of civilian government. And Goita, he's filling the vacuum. So now that Goita has locked in another 5 years, where does Mali go from here? In the short term, things might look stable on the surface. He's already consolidated power, the opposition is fractured, and the military is calling the shots. But in the long term, questions remain. Will power be returned to civilians? Will dissent be tolerated? What will the new constitution being written say? And perhaps the most important one, will there be accountability? And what will that look like? Because history shows us that stability without accountability often doesn't last. And when transitions become permanent and opposition is silenced, even well-intentioned leaders can lose their way. And even worse, the country risks getting stuck in a dangerous cycle of coups. Let's be real. This is no longer about guiding the country back to civilian rule, right? It's about reshaping the system entirely. from a flawed civilian democracy to a full-fledged military regime, cloaked in public support. And once that becomes the norm, what happens to future generations who've never seen a functioning democracy, who've only known leaders in military uniforms, ruling without elections? This is bigger than one man. It's about what kind of political culture is being shaped for the next 10, 20, even 30 years. Because when the people lose faith in democracy and military rule fills the void, what comes next might look stable, but it often comes at a cost. But here's the thing. This moment in Mali is part of a larger trend. Across the Sahel, we've seen a wave of military takeovers. Burkina Faso, Niger, now Mali, all led by young leaders in military uniforms who say the same thing. The old system failed. The people need protection. Foreign interference must go. And for many citizens, those messages resonate. It's like music to their ears. But here's what we need to reflect on. Is it democracy that failed these countries? Or were they never truly given democracy to begin with? Because what they received was the form of democracy, right? The elections, constitutions, parliaments, but not the function, accountability, justice, inclusion, and real trust in institutions. Because when people are asked to vote, but those votes don't lead to jobs, don't lead to security or basic dignity. When governments come and go, but the outcomes just stay the same, people stop believing in the system. Not because they are anti-democracy, but because they've never actually experienced what democracy should feel like. And then the deeper question emerges. Who was really in charge all these years? Were these governments truly free to govern in the interest of their own people? Or were they operating under the shadow of foreign influence, managing someone else's priorities while neglecting their own? Is that the real crack we're seeing split wide open now? Because maybe the issue isn't democracy itself. Maybe the issue is how democracy was imposed, shallow, externally shaped, hollowed out from within. That doesn't mean military rule is the answer either, but it does mean we need to take seriously the question people across the Sahel are asking. What kind of system will actually work for us? And maybe that's the real moment we're in, not just in Mali, but across the Sahel. A moment where people aren't just questioning who should lead them. They question how they've been led all along and why the systems they were promised never worked in their favor. This isn't just a political shift. It's a deep reckoning, and the answers that emerge in the coming years will shape the future of governance, not just in Mali, but across the continent. We're going to take a deeper look at this in another episode. So where do we go from here, my people? A military leader who came to power through 2 coups has just been handed 5 more years to rule without an election, without real opposition, without any guarantee of giving power back to the people. But maybe the most sobering part of this story is that many Malians, most of them, are okay with it. Because for too long, democracy in Mali was just a slogan, a banner for broken promises, a mask for corruption, a system that kept failing the very people it claimed to serve. So now people are choosing what they see as the lesser evil, a soldier in charge who at least seems to care about results. So now I turn it over to you, my people. What do you think? Is Goita's extended rule a necessary response to a broken system? Or is it the start of something more dangerous? And more importantly, what kind of leadership, what kind of system will actually serve the people? Let me know in the comments. I want to hear your take. And if you enjoy this show, hit that subscribe button, tap the notification bell, drop a super thanks, and share this with your group chats so we can have a broader conversation about the future of democracy in Africa. And if you're ready to go deeper, I'd love to invite you to join our membership community of change makers, thinkers, and truth seekers who believe in a better future. That's it for today's breakdown. Thanks so much for staying with me. I'm Sandra Babu-Boateng. Until next time, take care. Hey you! Thanks so much for watching this episode. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, don't forget to subscribe and join the family. Also, visit face2faceafrica.com for your daily news and updates on what's going on within the global Black community so you can stay informed.